Have you ever felt a chill run down your spine for no apparent reason? A sudden, inexplicable dizziness as if the room tilted just a second before you did. I used to dismiss these moments as mere fatigue, stress from a demanding job. But one night, I saw it. I was brushing my teeth, the mirror fogged from the shower. As I wiped the steam away, my reflection stared back. But something was off. My left eye was slightly lower, my smile tilted just a fraction. And then in the flickering bathroom light, I saw my shadow moved before I did. A dark silhouette, heavier on my left side, creeping like a second self. That is when I knew my yin and yang were imbalanced. The energy inside me was broken, and the universe was about to show me the toll it takes when the feminine and masculine forces within you wage war. At first, I tried to rationalize it. I told myself it was just a trick of the light, a long day playing games with my eyes, but the symptoms grew worse. My left hand would go numb at random hours, as though a cold hand was gripping it from within. My dreams became a battlefield, one half of me drowning in a dark, still lake, while the other half burned under a sun that never set. I woke up gasping, feeling torn between two worlds. The doctors said it was anxiety. The herbalist I visited whispered about a spirit imbalance. She gave me a pouch of dried herbs and told me to sleep with it over my heart. That night, I placed it on my chest, and as I drifted off, I felt something shift, a deep, resonant hum that vibrated through my bones. But the hum didn't bring peace. It brought a confrontation. In my dream, I stood in a vast, empty room. The floor was a mirror and the ceiling was a mirror, so I saw myself reflected infinitely in both directions, but the reflections weren't identical. The ones above me smiled, but their eyes were hollow. The ones below me wept, but their tears were blood. And at the center of it all stood a figure half man, half woman, with a face that changed with every blink. It spoke in a voice that was two voices at once, one high and trembling, one low and rumbling. "You have ignored us," it said. "You have let one side starve while the other feasted. Now we must merge or we must destroy you." I tried to run, but my feet were rooted to the mirrored floor. The figure stepped closer, and I saw that its left side was dark and cold, its right side bright and hot. They were pulling apart, the skin tearing down the middle. I screamed, and then I woke up. My room was freezing. My breath came out in clouds, but the heat in my chest was unbearable. I tore off my shirt and looked down. On my left side, my skin was pale and blue, like a corpse. On my right side, it was red and inflamed, burning to the touch. The line down the center of my torso was a jagged scar glowing faintly. I stumbled to the bathroom mirror, and there it was again, my reflection, but with one eye weeping and the other staring wide in terror. I pressed my hand to the glass, and the reflection did the same, but its left hand was bone, white and skeletal, while its right hand was flesh and blood. I felt a pull from within, as if something was trying to claw its way out of my left side. I fell to my knees, gasping, and the shadow on the wall grew thicker, darker. It reached out a hand and touched my scar. The pain was electric, and I heard a whisper, "Balance or death, choose." I spent the next week in a haze, caught between worlds. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. The world outside looked flat like a painting. The only thing that felt real was the war inside me. I researched everything I could about yin and yang, about the energy currents that flow through the body. I learned that when the balance is broken, the body becomes a vessel for chaos. The left side, the yin, had become a cold, hungry void. The right side, the yang, had become a raging inferno. They were fighting for dominance, and I was the battlefield. One night I decided to confront it. I sat in the dark in front of the mirror, and I closed my eyes. I focused on my breath, on the cold and the heat, and I tried to feel the boundary between them. At first, there was only pain. But then I saw it, a thin, silver thread running through my center, like a seam. I reached out with my mind and touched it. The room exploded into light. When I opened my eyes, I was no longer in my bathroom. I was in a cave of mirrors, each one reflecting a different version of me. Some showed me as a child laughing. Some showed me as an old man weeping. And at the far end, there was a throne made of bones and flowers. On that throne sat the figure from my dream, but now it was still. Its left side was a woman, carved from ice. Its right side was a man forged from fire. They looked at me, and the woman spoke. "You have come to the place where all things are born and all things die. You are the container. We are the contents. If you pour us out, we will spill. If you seal us in, we will explode," the man added. "You must learn to dance between us, to hold the cold and the heat in the same embrace. Only then will the war end." I stood there trembling, and I understood. The imbalance wasn't something to be fixed. It was something to be accepted. I reached out my left hand to the icy woman and my right hand to the fiery man. As I touched them, I felt a surge of energy that was both painful and beautiful. The ice melted into my skin and the fire cooled into warmth. The mirrors shattered and I fell back into my body with a gasp. The scar on my chest was gone. The shadow no longer moved without me, but I could still feel them, the two forces now woven together like a spiral. I live with them every day. Some days I lean cold, some days I lean hot, but I never let one side win, because I know now that the balance is a choice, a dance, a constant, fragile harmony. And if you ever feel a chill run down your spine for no reason, or a sudden dizziness that tilts the world, listen, it might be your own energy calling out for peace. Don't ignore it. The union of opposites is the most terrifying and the most beautiful thing you will ever face. And once you start that dance, there is no turning back. The first core realization came through my body. I woke each night at 3 a.m., the witching hour, with a cold sweat drenching my sheets. My heartbeat pounded in my ears, but my limbs felt like lead. I checked my phone, but the time was always the same: 3:15, 3:22, 3:38. The pattern was relentless. Doctors said it was anxiety, but I knew better. The yang, the active, fiery part of me, was too strong, burning through my sleep, while the yin, the calm, receptive side, was starving. One morning, I caught my reflection using a cracked mirror. My face was sallow, and behind me, a shadowy figure seemed to reach for my shoulder. I spun around, but no one was there. I realized my body was showing me the imbalance through insomnia, fatigue, and that lingering darkness in the mirror. It was a warning written in flesh and shadow. But seeing it in my own reflection was only the beginning. The imbalance started to seep into my surroundings. I began noticing things that shouldn't have been there: a faint scent of burning incense in rooms where none had been lit, the sound of footsteps padding softly in the hallway when I was home alone. It was as if the world itself had become a distorted mirror, reflecting my inner chaos back at me. The air grew heavy, pressing down on my shoulders with an unseen weight. I started avoiding mirrors altogether, because every time I looked, the shadowy figure was closer. At first it was just a blur, then a shape, then I could make out the outline of a hand reaching for my throat. I would flinch and turn on all the lights, but the darkness seemed to thicken, pooling in corners and creeping along the baseboards. One night, I decided to confront it. I sat in the dark of my living room, heart racing, and I closed my eyes. I focused on the heat in my chest, that burning yang energy, and I tried to push it down to make room for the cold stillness of yin. But the more I tried to force balance, the more the shadows writhed. I felt a cold breath on the back of my neck, and a voice, not quite audible, whispered static into my ear. I opened my eyes to find the room pitch black. The clock read 3 a.m. I stood up slowly, and as I did, I saw myself in the glass of the television screen. But it wasn't me. The reflection showed a figure hunched and gaunt, with eyes that were too white, too wide. And behind that figure, the shadowy hand was wrapped around its throat, squeezing gently. I realized then that the imbalance wasn't just a condition, it was a presence, and it was feeding. I started researching ancient texts, desperate for answers. I found mentions of a condition where the soul becomes unmoored when the two halves of the self fall out of harmony. The treatment was not medicine but ritual. To bring the yang and yin back into balance, you had to face the thing that was consuming your shadow. I gathered candles and salt, following instructions I barely understood. As the candles flickered to life, I felt a deep rumble in the floor. The air turned ice cold. I whispered incantations in a language I had never learned, yet the words came easily, as if they had been waiting inside me. The shadowy figure appeared in the corner of the room, no longer just a reflection but solid, three-dimensional. It had no face, but I felt its gaze. It opened its mouth, a void of blackness, and from within I heard my own voice screaming. I knew then that the imbalance was not something to be fixed or fought. It was a story I had to complete, so I stopped resisting. I sat down cross-legged on the floor facing the shadow, and I let the yang fire in me burn without trying to control it. The flames in the candles rose higher, and I felt the heat consuming my fear. The shadow took a step forward, and I could feel its cold hand on my heart. But instead of pulling away, I leaned into it. I accepted that the chaos and the stillness are not enemies. They are two sides of the same self, and I had been denying half of my nature. As I breathed in, I let the shadow merge with my own body. The cold seeped into my bones, but so did a strange peace. The screaming in my mind stopped. The clock struck 3:33 a.m., and for the first time in months I felt whole. When I opened my eyes, the candles had burned out, and the room was filled with soft morning light. The shadow was gone, but so was the burning heat in my chest. I walked to the bathroom mirror and looked at my face. It was no longer sallow. The dark circles under my eyes had faded, and though I felt a lingering coolness in my left hand, like a whisper of another presence, it no longer frightened me. I had seen the imbalance, faced it, and made it a part of me. The reflection showed only the man I was both before and after, a being of fire and shadow, finally at rest. I became a pendulum of extremes. One day I'd be crying in the shower over a lost earring. The next I'd scream at a barista for a wrong order. Friends said I was moody, but I felt like a puppet pulled by invisible strings. The yang was rage sharp and relentless, burning bridges with its fire. The yin was sorrow deep and suffocating, drowning me in tears. In a moment of clarity, I stood before my balcony, watching rain fall. The storm matched my insides. I whispered to the droplets, "Who am I?" And the wind answered with a howl. I saw my reflection in a puddle, but it wasn't me. It was an older, gaunter version with hollow eyes. That vision taught me emotions are the language of the soul. My yin and yang were screaming at each other, and I was the battlefield. The third and final lesson came through the world around me. Objects started acting strangely. The clock on my wall would spin backward, just for a second. Plants in my room withered even though I watered them daily. A single candle flickered blue and black, not golden. I touched a mirror and my fingers came away cold, as if it held a frost from another realm. One evening, I sat in total darkness, listening to my own breath. The air grew thick, and a whisper emerged from the corner. Balance or break. I knew then the imbalance wasn't just inside me. It was a crack in reality itself. The yin and yang were forces of nature, and I had let one rage too fiercely. I started meditating, chanting, aligning my breath with the moon's phases. Slowly, the shadow in the mirror retreated. The clock ticked forward. My reflection smiled fully evenly for the first time in months. The story of how I saw myself fractured, but I learned true harmony comes when you let the dark and light within you dance, not fight.